I had always prided myself on keeping the peace. For years, I'd tried to be the ideal wife and daughter, and I didn't ask for much, just a quiet life with Mike, my husband, and our 2 kids. We lived in a comfortable suburban neighborhood in Ohio, with a garden that looked out onto a tree-lined street and neighbors who always waved as they passed by. Life, for the most part, was simple, and I liked it that way. But nothing prepared me for what happened that Saturday afternoon. We had invited Mike's family over for dinner. It wasn't anything out of the ordinary. Mike's parents, his brother Tom, and his wife Nancy had all gathered at our house countless times before. The kids were playing in the living room, while Mike and I cooked together in the kitchen, his laughter filling the space as he joked about the spices. The house smelled like garlic and roast chicken, a familiar comfort that made everything feel normal. Despite the quiet undercurrent of tension between Mike's mother, Diane, and me, I'd known from the moment I'd met her that Diane wasn't particularly fond of me. At first, I thought it was just because I was the new woman in her son's life. But as the years passed, I realized it was something more. There were subtle, slight little digs here and there that made me feel like I was never quite good enough in her eyes. It didn't help that she had an unspoken, sometimes glaring, preference for her other son, Tom. She often referred to him as her best boy, as though I was a distant second in her eyes. I told myself it didn't matter, that I had Mike, and that was enough. But on this particular day, the tension was about to boil over. It started innocently enough. We sat down to eat, passing around the bowls of mashed potatoes and gravy, the conversation light. Diane seemed quieter than usual, but I didn't think much of it. I focused on my family, on the kids running around, on how lovely the evening felt. It wasn't until dessert was served that the storm hit. I had just taken a bite of the chocolate cake I'd made when Diane spoke, her voice cutting through the hum of conversation. "Marissa," she said sharply, looking directly at me. "Where is it?" "Where is what?" I asked, still chewing, confused by the sudden attention. "The necklace," she said, her voice laced with accusation. "The one I've been looking for. It was here last week, and now it's gone. I know you took it." For a moment, I sat frozen, my fork halfway to my mouth. "What are you talking about, Diane? I don't know anything about a necklace." Her eyes narrowed, a calculating look crossing her face. "Don't lie to me," she spat, her voice rising. "You've always been sneaky, always looking for a way to take what isn't yours. First, the silverware, now, this necklace. You thought I wouldn't notice." I blinked, trying to process what she was saying. My heart pounded in my chest, a mix of shock and disbelief flooding my system. A necklace. I had no idea what she was talking about. This was absurd. I'd never taken anything from her, never even wanted to. "What are you accusing me of?" I finally asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "I've never touched your things. You know I wouldn't do that." Diane wasn't listening. She was standing now, pacing in front of the table, her hands on her hips. "You've always been like this, Marissa, a thief, and now you've gone too far." She gestured toward me, her fingers shaking with anger. "I know you took it. You're the only one who had access to my things." I felt the blood drain from my face. The room had grown silent, everyone looking at us, unsure of what to do. Mike, who had been standing by the kitchen counter, stepped into the dining room, his face a picture of confusion. "What's going on?" he asked, looking between his mother and me. "Ask your wife," Diane said bitterly, pointing at me. "She took it." "I know she did." Mike looked at me, and for the first time in our entire relationship, I saw doubt flicker in his eyes. "Marissa, did you take it?" My heart broke in that moment. How could he doubt me? After all these years, all the trust we had built, and now he was questioning me in front of everyone. The sting of his words hit harder than Diane's accusations. I opened my mouth to speak, but no words came out. What could I say that would make him believe me? "Mike, I didn't take anything," I said, my voice trembling with frustration. "I swear to you, I haven't seen the necklace." "This is insane." Diane wasn't finished, though. "You're good at making excuses, aren't you? Always charming your way out of everything." "But I know the truth." She looked around the table at everyone. "Everyone, look at her. She's a thief, and she's been stealing from me for years." I felt the weight of the room's stares, the heat of embarrassment flooding my face. My breath caught in my throat, and the world seemed to tilt slightly beneath me. Mike stood there, unsure, caught between the two of us. His mother's words had planted a seed of doubt in his mind, and I knew that the damage was done. I tried to hold it together, to stay calm, but the tears welled up, and I could feel them threatening to spill over. Not in front of all of them, not in front of Mike. I haven't taken anything, I said again, my voice hoarse. But it didn't matter. Diane had made her accusation, and I was now the villain in her story. Mike didn't say anything. He just turned away, walking back to the kitchen, as if I was no longer his concern. And in that moment, I knew that everything had changed. The next few days were a blur. After Diane's outburst at dinner, things between Mike and me were never the same. I tried to reach out to him, to explain that I would never steal from his mother or anyone else, but every time I brought it up, he'd grow quiet and change the subject. He wasn't angry with me, but there was an unmistakable shift in the air. A subtle but deep unease between us. At first, I thought it was just the shock of the accusation, that it would blow over. But it didn't. I could see the doubt in his eyes whenever we talked about anything related to his family, especially Diane. He'd been caught in the middle, unsure of what to believe, and that hurt me more than the accusation itself. Our home felt emptier without the usual lightheartedness. The kids could feel it, too. They stopped asking about Grandma Gianni and avoided the subject altogether. I could tell they were uncomfortable with the tension. The house, once full of warmth and laughter, now felt cold and silent. I kept replaying that moment in my head, Diane's cruel words, the sting of Mike's hesitation. It wasn't just a stolen necklace. It was a betrayal of trust, a rift that seemed impossible to mend. On Monday morning, I went to work, hoping to escape the tension at home for a while. I was a marketing manager at a small firm in downtown Cleveland, a job that usually offered a sense of normalcy. But even there, I felt the weight of Diane's accusation following me. During lunch, I couldn't help but glance at my phone, hoping for a message from Mike, something to reassure me. Instead, there was nothing. It was around 2 p.m. when I received a call from my sister, Rachel. She had heard about the dinner incident from her husband, who had heard it from Mike's brother Tom. Rachel was concerned. "Marissa, are you okay? I heard what happened. I'm so sorry, but I don't get it. Why would she say something like that?" "I don't know," I said, my voice faltering. "I've been trying to figure it out myself. But Mike, he doesn't even want to talk about it. I feel like he doesn't trust me anymore." Rachel's voice softened, a mix of sympathy and frustration. "I know you didn't take anything, and you know that too. But it's Diane. She's always been difficult. I'm just worried that this is going to blow up into something bigger." Her words lingered in my mind, but I pushed them away. I didn't want to believe that Mike could let something like this come between us. But as the days went on, I couldn't ignore the growing distance. The arguments were subtle at first. Small things, like him forgetting to pick up groceries or not responding to my texts right away. It wasn't that he was actively distant, but there was a coldness that I couldn't shake. I decided to visit Diane the following week. It wasn't a decision I made lightly, but I knew I had to speak to her face to face. I had to clear my name, even if it meant confronting the woman who seemed to have made it her life's mission to make me feel like an outsider. I pulled into her driveway on a Wednesday morning, the sun low in the sky. The house was quiet, as usual. Diane's home was impeccably neat, the kind of place where every item had its perfect place, every cushion fluffed just right. I rang the doorbell, taking a deep breath. When Diane opened the door, she didn't even flinch. She just stared at me, her expression unreadable. "I need to talk to you," I said, my voice steady, though my heart raced. "About what?" Diane replied, her tone flat, giving nothing away. "The necklace," I began, before she could interrupt. "I didn't take it. I don't know where it is, but I swear on everything I hold dear, I didn't take it." Diane didn't respond immediately. Instead, she stepped aside, motioning for me to come in. "You have a lot of nerve, coming here and making demands," she said after a long pause. "But I suppose you're right about one thing. You haven't taken anything recently. I know you have a habit of taking what isn't yours, though." I felt my stomach churn. "I don't know what you're talking about, but I need you to stop spreading lies about me. Mike is struggling because of you. Our marriage is struggling." Diane raised an eyebrow. "I don't care about your marriage. What matters is family. And I'm not sure if you understand the concept of loyalty." I swallowed hard, trying to keep my composure. "I've been nothing but loyal to Mike and his family. But accusing me of stealing, that's something I won't stand for." Diane leaned against the doorframe, a small smirk playing on her lips. "I'm not the problem here. You are." Her words stung more than anything. I had hoped for some kind of remorse, an apology, but Diane wasn't interested in that. She had made up her mind, and no amount of pleading would change it. "Mike is my son," she said quietly. "He'll always believe me over you. I'm his mother." I took a step back, feeling like the walls were closing in on me. "You're wrong, Diane. You don't know Mike. You don't know how much he loves me." I turned to leave, but before I could reach the door, Diane spoke again. "Don't bother coming back until you've fixed this mess. And don't think for one second that you'll win him over with your lies." Her words hung in the air as I walked out of her house, a heavy weight pressing down on my chest. I drove home in silence, knowing that things were only getting worse. Diane had made it clear that she wouldn't back down. But what was I supposed to do now? The days after my conversation with Diane were some of the hardest I'd ever endured. The distance between Mike and me had grown unbearable, and I found myself clinging to the hope that somehow I could fix things, could convince him that I hadn't stolen his mother's necklace. I had never felt more alone in my marriage. We hardly spoke anymore, and when we did, it was nothing more than small talk, the kind you exchange with a roommate, not a spouse. I was exhausted, emotionally drained, and at my wit's end. I knew I couldn't keep living in this limbo, but what choice did I have? Mike was caught between his loyalty to his mother and his love for me, and I could feel that loyalty growing stronger by the day. But then, one evening, a breakthrough came when I least expected it. It was a Tuesday night, and Mike had stayed late at work. I was in the kitchen, cleaning up after dinner, when I noticed something strange. The bottom drawer in the kitchen cabinet, the one we never really used, was slightly ajar. I bent down to close it, but something caught my eye. There, hidden behind a stack of unused napkins, was a small leather pouch. I froze, my pulse quickening. The pouch was unfamiliar to me. It didn't belong to Mike or me, and certainly not to the kids. Slowly, I pulled it from its hiding place and opened it. Inside was a delicate, vintage-looking necklace, the same one Diane had been accusing me of stealing. I couldn't believe my eyes. It was the necklace. But why was it here? Why had it been hidden in a drawer in the back of the kitchen cabinet? It didn't make sense. I felt a rush of mixed emotions: relief, anger, confusion. Finally, I had found it. But this discovery only raised more questions. I carefully examined the necklace, noticing the intricate design and the faded engraving on the back of the pendant. It was a family heirloom. I could tell that much. But how had it ended up in our kitchen drawer? And why had Diane never mentioned it had been misplaced before? I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but the more I thought about it, the more suspicious everything seemed. Diane had been so quick to accuse me, and I'd never even had the chance to explain myself. Was it possible that she had hidden it herself and then blamed me to cover up something she'd done? I didn't have time to dwell on it for long, as I heard the front door open. Mike was home. He called out, his voice cheery, but there was an edge to it I couldn't ignore. "I'm home," he said as he entered the kitchen. His eyes landed on me and the necklace I was holding. The moment he saw it, his face went pale. "Where did you find that?" His voice was strained, a flicker of panic in his eyes. I swallowed hard, carefully placing the necklace back in the pouch. "In the kitchen drawer," I said quietly. "Why was it hidden there, Mike?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he ran a hand through his hair, pacing around the room. "I don't know," he said, his voice low. "It shouldn't have been there. I didn't know it was hidden." "Then why is it here?" I asked, my voice shaky but determined. "Diane accused me of stealing it. And you, Mike, you didn't even defend me. You didn't trust me." He stopped pacing and turned to face me. For a moment, we just stared at each other. His expression was torn, conflicted. Finally, he spoke. "I didn't want to believe it," he admitted, his voice thick with guilt. "But she's my mother, and she was so certain. You didn't think to ask me." I shot back, my emotions getting the best of me. "You didn't even give me a chance to explain. You just believed her without question." Mike looked down, his jaw clenched. I was confused. "Marissa, Diane has always had a way of making me doubt myself, but when I saw you so upset, I knew something wasn't right. I didn't want to believe it, but I didn't know what else to think." I shook my head, the frustration bubbling up inside me. "Mike, this isn't just about the necklace. This is about trust. This is about your mother accusing me of something terrible, and you standing by and doing nothing." "I'm sorry," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "I should have trusted you, but this whole thing has torn me apart. I didn't know who to believe." I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. "I don't know what's going on, Mike, but I'm not the one who took that necklace. It was hidden in our house for a reason. Someone else is trying to make me the scapegoat." He looked at the pouch in my hands and then back at me. "What are you saying? Are you saying my mother planted it there?" I hesitated. Part of me wanted to believe that Diane was innocent, that I was just overreacting, but the pieces were starting to fall into place. I don't know, Mike, I said, my voice shaking, but I think we need to talk to her. We need to get to the bottom of this before it destroys everything. Mike didn't say anything for a long time. He just stood there, his eyes fixed on the necklace. Then, finally, he nodded. We'll talk to her tomorrow, but I need you to promise me something. What? I asked, feeling my heart race. Promise me you won't jump to conclusions, he said softly. Let's handle this carefully, okay? I nodded, though doubt lingered in the back of my mind. I wasn't sure if I could trust Diane to be honest with us, but I was willing to try, for Mike, for our family. The next day, I prepared myself for what felt like the hardest conversation I would ever have. I had to confront Diane, but this time, I wasn't going to stand there and let her accuse me of something I didn't do. The morning of the confrontation, I felt a knot in my stomach. I knew that confronting Diane again was a risk, but it was one I had to take. I had discovered the necklace, and Mike had agreed that we needed answers. He wasn't fully convinced that Diane had lied, but I could see the hesitation in his eyes when he looked at me. I was determined to clear my name, even if it meant facing the woman who had caused so much chaos. Mike and I decided to meet Diane at her house, and we arrived just before noon. The air was thick with tension as we stepped onto the porch, and I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. Mike was still holding on to some hope that his mother had simply misplaced the necklace, but I had seen enough to believe that something more was going on. Diane had been too quick to accuse me, and now, after finding the necklace hidden in our own kitchen drawer, I couldn't ignore the possibility that she was orchestrating something behind the scenes. Mike rang the doorbell, and we stood there for what felt like an eternity before Diane opened the door. She didn't greet us with a smile or any sign of warmth, just a cold, measured look that sent a chill down my spine. "What's this about?" Diane asked, her tone clipped. She didn't invite us in, and I knew immediately that this wasn't going to be a friendly discussion. "We need to talk," Mike said, his voice firm but calm. "About the necklace, the one you accused Marissa of stealing." Diane's eyes flicked to me for a moment before returning to Mike. "I don't know why we're still discussing this. The necklace is gone, and it's clear to me who took it." I stepped forward, my voice steady despite the rush of emotions bubbling beneath the surface. "Diane, I didn't steal it. I found it hidden in our kitchen drawer. I don't know why it was there, but it wasn't me who took it." Diane's face hardened, and she crossed her arms over her chest. "I'm not here for your excuses, Marissa. The truth is, you've always had a way of taking what doesn't belong to you." "I'm not surprised." Mike looked between us, his face a mixture of confusion and frustration. "Mom, this isn't helping. You're accusing her in front of me, and it's destroying our family. Can't you see that?" Diane's eyes flickered with a cold glint, but she didn't soften. Instead, she stood even straighter, her posture rigid as she spoke. "You don't understand, Mike. I've seen the way she's been around my things for years. I trusted her, but now I see the truth. She's a thief, and she's been taking from me all along." I could feel the anger rising in my chest, but I tried to stay composed. I wasn't going to let her bully me into silence again. "You're wrong, Diane. I never took anything from you, but now I'm starting to wonder if you've been hiding it all along." For a brief moment, I saw a flicker of hesitation in Diane's eyes, but it quickly vanished. She took a deep breath and shook her head. "This is pointless. You've been caught, Marissa. It's over." But Mike wasn't having it anymore. He stepped forward, his voice rising in frustration. "No, it's not over. I'm done being manipulated by you, Mom. I'm done letting you control everything. I need to know the truth, and I'm not going to let you keep lying about this." Diane's face twisted in anger as she looked at Mike. "You're siding with her? After everything I've done for you, after all these years, you're going to believe her over your own mother?" Mike's voice grew louder. "I'm not siding with anyone, Mom. I'm siding with the truth. You're not going to destroy my marriage, and you're not going to control me anymore." There was a tense silence, and for a moment, it felt like everything was hanging in the balance. Diane stared at Mike, and I could see the hurt in her eyes. It wasn't the hurt of a mother who had been wronged, it was the hurt of someone who had lost control. And in that moment, I realized something. Diane wasn't just angry with me. She was angry because she had lost her grip on Mike, the one person who had always been her ally. Suddenly, Diane let out a bitter laugh, a sound that sent a chill through me. "You think you've won, don't you? You think you've got all the answers, but you have no idea what you're dealing with." Mike frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" Diane turned away, walking toward the hallway. She muttered something under her breath that I couldn't quite hear, and then she stopped at a small desk near the door. She opened a drawer, pulled out a piece of paper, and handed it to Mike. "Take a look at this," she said, her voice low. "This is a letter from your father. You don't remember it, but he left something for me, a clause in the will. He knew what kind of person she was." Mike, I felt my stomach drop as I glanced at the letter. My mind raced. What was she talking about? What could this letter possibly have to do with me? Mike read the letter, his face slowly changing as he took in the contents. When he finished, he looked at Diane with confusion. "What's this supposed to mean? What does this have to do with Marissa?" Diane's eyes gleamed with something dark, something I couldn't quite place. "It means that I was right all along, and now it's too late to fix it." I felt my heart pounding in my chest. What was happening? Was this the moment Diane had been waiting for? Was she trying to bury me under lies, under accusations, under things I didn't even know existed? I wanted to ask Mike what the letter said, but I didn't. I just stood there, frozen in the tension of the moment. The accusation wasn't over. It had only just begun. The letter that Diane handed Mike was a catalyst I hadn't anticipated. I thought it would reveal some kind of confession, a moment of clarity, something that could unravel her lies and bring the truth to the surface. Instead, the letter opened a door to a world of family secrets, buried feelings, and a betrayal I hadn't seen coming. Mike didn't speak immediately after reading the letter. His face was pale, his brow furrowed as though the weight of what he had just read was too much to process. Diane stood across from us, her arms crossed, watching him with an almost predatory calm. She had known what was in that letter, and now, it seemed, she was watching Mike carefully for his reaction. "What does it say, Mike?" I finally asked, my voice barely a whisper. "What does it mean?" Mike slowly folded the letter and placed it on the table. "It's from Dad, ... He wrote this about a year before he passed away. He left instructions about the family's possessions, and about who would inherit what." My heart skipped a beat. This wasn't just about the necklace. This was about something much bigger. Diane's eyes glinted with a cold, almost victorious light as she watched us. "Go on," I urged, trying to mask my growing panic. Mike's eyes flicked from Diane to me. He hesitated before speaking, his voice heavy with disbelief. "It says here that ... Dad left a special clause, one that I didn't even know about. He said that if anyone in the family were to become greedy or deceitful, the inheritance would be distributed differently. That's what this is about." I felt a lump rise in my throat. "What do you mean? Greedy? Deceitful? This doesn't make sense." Mike's expression was strained. "It says that if anyone is found to have taken something that wasn't theirs, ... or if any lies or accusations are made, the entire inheritance would be reevaluated. Essentially, it's saying that someone's trying to manipulate things." I froze, my blood running cold. Diane's accusations, her manipulations, it was all part of a bigger game, and somehow, I was right in the middle of it. "That's what this is about?" I asked. "You're accusing me of theft to get control of everything." Diane smirked. "You really think your father left everything to you without conditions? That would have been far too simple. This family has secrets. Marissa, your husband's father was far more astute than you give him credit for." My mind was racing. Diane had known about this clause for years, and now, she was using it against me. It wasn't just about the necklace anymore. It was about the entire inheritance, about control of everything Mike's father had left behind. Mike remained silent, staring at the letter, and I could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on me. "Mike, what are we going to do?" I asked, my voice barely audible. But Mike didn't respond right away. He seemed lost in thought, as if he were trying to process everything at once. Finally, he spoke, his voice shaky. "I don't know, Marissa. I didn't know any of this. This clause, it's in the will. It's binding. If Diane has proof of any wrongdoing, if she can convince me that you're lying, it could change everything." I could feel my world crumbling around me. The thought of losing everything, of Mike doubting me, of being caught in a web of lies I couldn't even begin to untangle it, was more than I could bear. "Mike," I said, my voice breaking, "I didn't do this. I swear to you, I didn't steal anything. I would never do that to you, or to your family." Diane stepped closer, her voice smooth and calculated. "Maybe she didn't take it, Mike. But the truth is, she's always been looking for a way in. You've let her, and now, you'll have to pay the price for it." My stomach churned as Diane's words sank in. I felt like I was being suffocated by the very people who should have supported me. The one person who was supposed to have my back, the person I had loved and trusted for so many years, was standing there, unsure of me. "I need some space," Mike said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. "I need to think." I watched as he walked out of the room, his steps heavy, leaving me alone with Diane. The silence between us was deafening. Diane's smile was thin and cold, her eyes gleaming with a satisfaction that made my skin crawl. "You see, Marissa, it's all falling apart. Mike is mine, and you're nothing but a distraction, a pawn in a game you don't even understand." I felt the anger rising within me, but I swallowed it down. "I won't let you get away with this, Diane. I won't." Her eyes glinted with something dark, something triumphant. "We'll see, won't we?" As the door slammed behind Mike, I stood there, numb with the realization that everything had changed. The trust I had in him, the love I had fought for, was it all slipping away? I didn't know anymore. Over the next few days, I found myself isolated, both physically and emotionally. Mike was distant, lost in the turmoil of the will and the inheritance. He wasn't sure who to trust, and I could see it in his eyes every time we spoke. The strain was unbearable. I wanted to fix things, but it felt like every step forward only led to another roadblock. I wasn't just fighting for my marriage anymore. I was fighting for my reputation, for my dignity, for everything that had once felt like a solid foundation beneath me. And in this twisted game Diane was playing, I wasn't sure who would come out on top, or if I'd survive it at all. The days that followed felt like an eternity. The house felt quieter, the space between Mike and me growing thicker with each passing moment. Every conversation felt like a delicate balancing act, the weight of Diane's accusations hanging over us. I wasn't sure if I was losing Mike or if we were just caught in the crossfire of a family war I won, never asked to be a part of. Mike's silence was suffocating. He was distant, retreating into his work, and I was left to deal with the fallout of Diane's lies and the uncertainty that now clouded our marriage. I tried to reach out, to remind him of the person I was, the person he had married, but each time I approached him, it felt like he was slipping further away. I couldn't shake the feeling that Diane was winning slowly, methodically. But then, on a cold Friday afternoon, I received a phone call that would change everything. It was from Anne, the family lawyer. I'd met her only a few times before, but she had always struck me as professional and no-nonsense. "Mrs. Richards," she said, her voice crisp, "I need to speak with you about the will. It's urgent." My stomach dropped at the mention of the will. Had Diane done something else to further complicate matters? Was this the final blow? "I'm available," I said quickly, my pulse quickening. "What's going on?" Anne hesitated for a moment before speaking again. "It's about the letter your mother-in-law showed Mike. There's something I need to clarify with you. Would you be able to come to the office today?" I agreed without hesitation, my mind racing with questions. What could Anne want to clarify? Was Diane hiding something more sinister than I had imagined? When I arrived at the law office, I was greeted by Anne's assistant and led to a small conference room at the back. The moment Anne entered, I could tell something was different. She was usually calm, collected, but today, there was a tension in her posture. She sat down across from me and took a deep breath. "I've been reviewing the family documents," she began, "and I need to tell you something. The letter that Diane gave Mike isn't what it seems." I frowned, leaning forward. "What do you mean?" "Diane made it sound like a clause in your father-in-law's will, but now you're saying it's not." Anne nodded slowly. "It is a clause, but there's more to it. You see, Thomas Richards, Mike's father, had some very specific conditions written into his will regarding the inheritance. However, there was an additional addendum, one that wasn't included in the official copy of the will that Diane has shown Mike." I felt a flicker of hope stir inside me. "So Diane has been hiding something?" "Yes," Anne replied, her eyes narrowing with concern. "She's been hiding a crucial detail. Thomas left a separate, confidential document that outlined specific conditions for distribution in case of disputes among family members." I was stunned. "So it's not just about the necklace. There's something else." Anne nodded again. "That's right. This addendum specifically addresses situations like this: accusations of theft, and even the possibility of family members trying to manipulate the inheritance. It's designed to protect the family's legacy, to ensure that everything is fair. And from what I've gathered, it seems that your mother-in-law may have deliberately manipulated the situation to trigger this clause." My heart raced as the pieces began to fall into place. Diane had known about this addendum all along. She wasn't just accusing me to cover up a mistake. She was using the situation to her advantage, trying to leverage the clause to gain control over more of the inheritance. What exactly does the addendum say? I asked, my voice trembling with anticipation. Anne looked around the room, as though making sure no one else was listening. It says that if a family member accuses another of wrongdoing, particularly theft or deception, an independent investigation must take place. And if that family member is found to have manipulated the situation, they forfeit their claim to the inheritance. The person who has been falsely accused can then claim the portion that was originally set aside for the manipulator. I couldn't believe it. Diane had practically set herself up to lose everything, all because she had tried to use me as a pawn in her power game. So you're telling me, I said, trying to process everything, that Diane's accusations against me could end up benefiting me instead. Anne smiled, though it was a tight, weary smile. That's exactly what I'm saying, but there's a catch. You'll need to act fast, and you'll need to prove that Diane was the one manipulating the situation. It's not going to be easy, and it will take time, but if we can show that she planted the accusations to trigger this clause, then she will lose her claim, and you could be entitled to what she was hoping to take. I felt a rush of relief wash over me, but it was quickly tempered by the realization that I was still in a battle. Diane wasn't going to give up without a fight, and I had no idea how far she would go to retain control. Still, for the first time in weeks, I felt like I had a chance. I'll do whatever it takes, I said, my voice steady. I'm not going to let her win, not this time. Anne nodded. I'll start gathering the evidence we need, but remember, this could get ugly. There's a lot at stake here, and Diane has the resources to drag things out. I stood up, feeling a newfound sense of determination. I'm ready. Let's take this to the next step. I walked out of the lawyer's office that afternoon, feeling like I had found an ally, someone who could help me expose Diane's lies. But as I drove home, my mind was already racing. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, and I knew the price for truth could be steep, but it was a risk I was willing to take. The next few weeks passed in a blur. Anne, the family lawyer, worked tirelessly to gather the evidence we needed to prove Diane's manipulation, but the pressure was mounting. Every day felt like a ticking clock, the weight of Diane's false accusations hanging over me. Mike, though he was more supportive, still couldn't shake the lingering doubt. He wanted to believe that I was innocent, but the reality of his mother's lies was difficult to face. Each time I looked at him, I could see the strain in his eyes, the confusion, the guilt. We weren't just fighting for the inheritance anymore. We were fighting for the future of our marriage. It wasn't just the tension between Mike and me that was growing unbearable. Diane, of course, was relentless. She didn't back down for a second, continuing to push her narrative, twisting the truth to fit her agenda. She had a network of friends and acquaintances who supported her, all of whom seemed to feed into her belief that I was guilty of something, even as I did everything in my power to prove her wrong. But despite everything, there was something else I had discovered. Anne had uncovered a hidden recording of one of Diane's phone conversations, a conversation where she made it crystal clear that she had deliberately framed me. It was one thing for Diane to accuse me publicly, but this conversation revealed her true intentions in a way I couldn't ignore. It was a Friday afternoon when Anne called with the news that would change everything. "Marissa," Anne's voice crackled over the phone, "I have something important. I've been going through the recordings, and I found something that might be just what we need." I sat up straight, my heart pounding in my chest. "What did you find?" Anne paused for a moment, and I could almost feel the weight of the information on the other side. "It's a phone call between Diane and one of her close friends. She talks about how she plans to get you out of the way, to accuse you of stealing the necklace so she can gain control of everything. The language is clear. She even says that she knew she'd get Mike to doubt you." I felt my breath catch in my throat. "Are you serious? She actually said that?" "I am. This is exactly what we need to expose her for what she really is. If we play this right, this could end everything." I couldn't believe it. The evidence was finally in our hands, but I knew that bringing this to light wouldn't be easy. Diane was powerful, and she wouldn't go down without a fight. But this was it, the breakthrough I had been waiting for. Mike and I decided to confront Diane with the evidence. It wasn't going to be easy, but I knew that this was the only way to end the lies and bring everything out into the open. With Anne's help, we set up a meeting at the family lawyer's office, a neutral ground where the truth could finally come to light. The day of the meeting, my hands were shaking as we walked into the lawyer's office. Mike was silent beside me, his face unreadable. I had no idea how he would react to hearing his mother's voice on that recording, but I knew it had to happen. The truth had to come out. Diane arrived a few minutes after us, her posture stiff and rigid, as usual. She didn't look at me when she entered the room, her gaze fixed on Mike, as if she were trying to convey a silent message to him. But I wasn't going to let her manipulate him anymore. Anne set up the recording equipment, and the room fell silent. Diane glanced at us both, a smug expression on her face, clearly not aware of what was about to unfold. Anne pressed play, and the room was filled with Diane's voice, unmistakable and cold, as she plotted her next move. I single quotes LL accuse her of stealing the necklace. That way Mike will doubt her, and I'll get what's mine. Diane's voice said clearly, I know how he thinks he'll believe me over her. She's always been a distraction, and now I can take everything. I watched Mike's face as the words hit him, his expression morphing from confusion to disbelief. He didn't say anything at first, just sat there, stunned, as the recording continued. Diane's voice, full of venom and deceit, echoed through the room, revealing exactly what she had planned all along. When the recording finished, the silence was deafening. Diane was visibly shaken, her eyes darting between Mike and me, her lips pressed into a thin line. She looked almost as if she had been caught in the act, and for the first time, I saw a crack in her armor. Mike finally spoke, his voice low and controlled. Is this true, Mom? Did you really plan this? Diane opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. She stood up abruptly, pacing in a circle, her hands wringing together as if trying to find a way out. This isn't what it seems, she muttered, her voice breaking. You don't understand, Mike. I was only trying to protect the family. You don't know what she's like. She's been taking things from me for years. Enough, Mike said, his voice firm now. You've done enough. You've been lying to me, and I've let it go on for far too long. I can't do this anymore. I looked at Diane, my heart heavy with a mix of anger and relief. For so long, I had been the one on the defensive, fighting accusations that weren't mine. But now, for the first time, I felt the power shifting. The truth was finally out. I'm sorry, Marissa, Mike said quietly, turning to me. I should have trusted you. I should have seen through all of this. Tears welled up in my eyes, but I fought them back. It's okay, I whispered. I just want us to move forward, together. Diane didn't say anything more. She simply turned and walked out of the room, her head held low, her pride shattered. The damage had been done, and I wasn't sure if anything could ever repair the rift between us. But in that moment, I knew that I had fought for what was right, and the truth had won. The silence after Diane left the room felt heavy, like the weight of years of lies and manipulation had finally come crashing down. I stood there for a moment, the truth ringing in my ears, the sound of Diane's own voice betraying her playing over and over in my mind. Mike stood beside me, his gaze fixed on the door through which his mother had just exited. There was a hollow look in his eyes and unspoken sadness that I wasn't sure how to address. I hadn't expected him to fully embrace the truth so quickly. The shock of hearing his mother's words had clearly hit him hard, but there was something in the air now, an unspoken understanding that couldn't be ignored. Mike, I began cautiously, my voice hesitant. I wasn't sure how to even begin healing the wound this had caused. I don't know what to say. Marissa, Mike said quietly, his voice cracking slightly. I should have believed you from the start. I let her manipulate me, and it's hard to face. I reached out, placing a hand on his arm. You don't have to apologize. We've been through hell together, and it's not your fault. You couldn't have known what she was doing. He nodded, still looking down at his feet. There was so much more to this than just a family squabble. It was about trust and betrayal, and the hurt that came with discovering the people you loved were capable of such deceit. As the lawyer's office door clicked shut behind us, signaling that Diane had left, Anne turned to us. I'll make sure everything is documented, and we'll file a petition for the will to be altered based on the manipulations that have been exposed. This will take a little time to process through the courts, but it's a solid case now. Mike finally looked at her, his voice still thick with emotion. What happens now? Anne met his gaze, then glanced at me, her expression kind but firm. Now, Diane will likely contest the change, but with the evidence we have, especially the recording, it's unlikely she'll be successful. The clause she used to manipulate the situation is now void, and that leaves her without any claim to the estate. I felt a surge of relief, but also an overwhelming sadness. This entire ordeal had torn our family apart. Diane may have lost the battle, but the emotional toll had been far greater than I could ever have imagined. Over the next few weeks, Diane's attempts to contest the will came to nothing. The recording of her phone conversation, combined with the evidence we'd gathered, left her with no recourse. She tried to reach out, sending letters and leaving messages for Mike, but he refused to engage. The legal system moved slowly, but inevitably, Diane lost her claim to the inheritance, and the will was altered to reflect the true wishes of Mike's father. It was a victory, but it didn't feel like one. Diane was family, and no matter how much she had betrayed me, no matter how much she had tried to tear us apart, the reality of losing her as part of our lives was bittersweet. As for Mike and me, it took time to rebuild what we had lost. The wounds between us, though not as deep as those between Diane and me, had left scars. We went to counseling, both of us working hard to rebuild the trust that had been shattered, and slowly, we began to find our way back to each other. It wasn't easy, and there were moments of doubt, but we were stronger for it. In the end, the inheritance that Diane had fought so desperately to control was redistributed, with the majority going to charity, as Mike's father had originally intended. It felt right, a final twist in the saga that had begun with Diane's manipulation. In a strange way, it brought a sense of closure not just for the estate, but for the family. As for Diane, she disappeared from our lives. She moved away, and we heard little from her after that. Some people might say she got what was coming to her, but the truth is, the biggest loss wasn't the inheritance or the assets, it was the family she had lost along the way. And that, in the end, was the most fitting form of karmic retribution. *** Author's note. This story was not just about a battle for inheritance or a family dispute over material possessions. It was about the power of truth and the corrosive effects of manipulation and deceit within families. Often, family members, those who should be our greatest allies, are the ones who hurt us the most, and the betrayal can feel like a deep wound. Diane's actions in the story are not just a simple case of greed, but a deeper commentary on control, insecurity, and the lengths people will go to when they feel threatened or entitled. The moral of this story is a complex one, as it touches on several themes. First, it highlights how trust once broken can be the hardest thing to rebuild. In Marissa's case, the tension between her and Mike didn't just stem from the lies his mother told, but from the emotional weight of being doubted by the person she loved most. When trust is fractured, it requires vulnerability, time, and effort to repair, and even then, it may never return to its original state. But it's also a reminder that, with effort and open communication, reconciliation is possible, even in the face of betrayal. Another key theme is the power of standing up for oneself, even when the odds are stacked against you. Marissa's journey was not an easy one. It required courage, persistence, and resilience in the face of emotional manipulation and public humiliation. But she didn't back down. She fought for the truth and for the integrity of her marriage. In doing so, she not only cleared her name but also reclaimed her strength and dignity. This is an important lesson for anyone facing unfair accusations or situations that seem impossible to overcome. The truth may not always win in the way we expect, but when we stand by our integrity, we can find peace in knowing that we did the right thing. Lastly, Diane's downfall is a stark reminder of the dangers of manipulation and control within families. Diane's desire for power over the inheritance became an obsession, blinding her to the damage she was causing to her relationships. She thought that by pushing others down, she could elevate herself, but in the end, she lost everything. The ironic twist of her losing her claim to the estate was the ultimate karmic justice, a clear illustration that no matter how much someone tries to control others, the consequences of their actions will catch up with them. What Diane failed to see was that love, trust, and respect are far more valuable than wealth and control. When you sacrifice these for the sake of material gain, the damage is irreversible. Ultimately, the story is a meditation on family, trust, and the consequences of betrayal. It asks us to reflect on what we value most and how far we're willing to go to protect those values, even when the path isn't easy. The resolution isn't just about legal victories or financial restitution. It's about reclaiming what's been lost: trust, love, and the integrity of relationships. Diane's defeat wasn't just her loss of the inheritance. It was her loss of the family she had tried so desperately to control, which, in the end, was the true consequence of her actions. I hope this story serves as a reminder to all of us. The truth always finds its way to the surface, and no matter how much darkness we face, light will always prevail. It's not the inheritance that defines us, it's our ability to love, trust, and stand up for what is right, even when it's hard.